Welcome to Ancient Relics Keeper. Uncover the hidden secrets of history, from ancient mysteries to lost civilizations. Join us on this thrilling journey. Subscribe and dive into the unknown. In the dense jungles of Costa Rica, a profound mystery lies scattered across the land. Perfectly round stone spheres, some weighing over 15 tons. They are ancient artifacts, yet they look almost alien in their precision. Who carved these incredible objects? And for what purpose? Today, we journey to Central America to explore one of the greatest unexplained artifacts of our time, the stone spheres of Costa Rica. What secrets have they been hiding for over 1,000 years? Our story begins not in the hallowed halls of a museum or in the dusty pages of an ancient text, but in a place wild, untamed, and largely untouched by the modern world. The year is 1939. The location: the Diquis Delta in southern Costa Rica, a vast, green, breathing labyrinth of swamps and jungle, squeezed between the mountains and the Pacific Ocean. For centuries, this land had kept its secrets locked away beneath a thick canopy of trees, its silence broken only by the call of exotic birds and the rustle of unseen creatures. But that silence was about to be shattered forever. At this time, a powerful force was cutting its way through this primordial landscape. The United Fruit Company, an American corporation of immense scale and ambition, had arrived with a singular goal: to clear this dense jungle and transform it into sprawling banana plantations. To them, the jungle was not a mystery to be explored, but an obstacle to be conquered. Day after day, teams of workers, armed with machetes, axes, and heavy machinery, waged war against the wilderness. The air, thick with a humidity that felt like a second skin, was filled with the roar of engines and the crash of falling timber. It was a relentless, grueling process of taming the untamable. The men working there were focused on their task, their minds on the hard labor and the wages it would bring. They were not archaeologists or historians. They were farmers and laborers, carving a new world out of the old. They had no reason to believe they were standing on top of one of the greatest archaeological mysteries of the 20th century. Then one day it happened. A bulldozer, pushing a mound of earth and tangled roots, came to a sudden, jarring halt. The engine groaned in protest. The driver, frustrated, tried again, giving it more power. The machine lurched forward, but was stopped by something solid, something immense, buried just below the surface. Workers gathered around, annoyed by the delay. They assumed it was just another stubborn tree stump or a large, awkwardly shaped boulder, a common nuisance in their line of work. They took up their shovels and pickaxes, ready to dig it out and move on. As they cleared away the soil, however, the mood began to change. The frustration on their faces slowly gave way to confusion, and then to a quiet, collective awe. What they were uncovering was not a jagged, natural rock. It was smooth, impossibly smooth. As more earth was pulled away, a shape began to emerge from its centuries-long slumber. It was a curve, a perfect, elegant arc of dark, volcanic rock. They kept digging, their movements now more careful, more deliberate, driven by a growing sense of wonder. Finally, they had unearthed it completely. Standing before them, in the middle of the cleared jungle, was an object that defied all logic. It was a stone sphere, not just a roundish rock, but an almost flawless ball of stone, so perfectly spherical it looked as if a giant had left one of his marbles behind. This single, astonishing object would have been a mystery in itself. But it was only the beginning. As the company continued to clear more and more land, the jungle began to give up its secrets one by one. A few days later, another sphere was found, and then another, and another. Soon, it became clear that this was not an isolated anomaly. They were everywhere, scattered across the delta. The discovery was staggering. This was not one object, but a collection. A silent, stone army waiting beneath the soil. What they found was a phenomenon on a scale that was difficult to comprehend. The spheres varied dramatically in size. Some were small, no bigger than a bowling ball, while others were enormous, standing taller than a man and weighing up to 15 or 16 tons, as much as 2 large elephants. To move even one of these giants would have required the coordinated effort of dozens of people. And yet, here they were, hundreds of them. They were carved from a type of hard volcanic rock called gabbro, a material notoriously difficult to shape, even with modern tools. But the most mind-boggling feature was their precision. Many of the spheres, especially the larger ones, were so perfectly round that any imperfections were nearly invisible to the naked eye. They were masterpieces of stonework, triumphs of engineering that seemed completely out of place, created by a culture with no known written language or advanced technology. News of the strange bolus, as the workers called them, began to spread beyond the plantations. At first, it was just local chatter, stories told in towns and villages. But the sheer number and undeniable strangeness of the objects could not be ignored. Word reached the capital, San Jose, and soon scholars and government officials began to pay attention. But before the careful hands of archaeology could begin their work, a different, more destructive force was unleashed, born not of scientific curiosity, but of human nature itself. In the absence of facts, people turned to legends, and the region was rich with them. Old folktales spoke of a god named Terra, the god of thunder, who lived in the Talamanca Mountains. It was said that Terra used a giant blowgun to shoot stone balls. These very spheres sat the gods of the winds and hurricanes to drive them away. Other legends whispered that the spheres were the possessions of a long-lost race of giants. But there was one particular myth, one intoxicating whisper, that captured the imagination of the public more than any other: the belief that the spheres contained gold. This idea, that these perfect stone containers held a treasure of unimaginable value at their core, spread like wildfire. It was a powerful, seductive thought. Whispers turned into rumors, and rumors ignited into a fever of greed. The discovery site was no longer a place of wonder, but a potential gold mine. A frantic, chaotic treasure hunt began. Workers from the fruit company, local villagers, and opportunistic adventurers descended upon the Dequas Delta, their eyes gleaming with the promise of riches. What followed was an archaeological tragedy. People ignored the historical significance of the spheres, seeing them only as giant safes waiting to be cracked open. They drilled holes into their smooth surfaces. They tried to split them with fire and water. And, in the most heartbreaking acts of destruction, they used dynamite. The quiet jungle, which had recently echoed with the sounds of discovery, now rang with explosions. The sound of a blast would rip through the air, followed by a moment of silence as treasure hunters rushed forward, only to be met with bitter disappointment. Sphere after sphere was blown apart, revealing nothing but solid, worthless rock inside. Each explosion was a devastating blow not just to the stone, but to history itself. In archaeology, context is everything. The precise location of an artifact, its position relative to other objects, and the layer of soil it's found in, all of this is crucial data that tells a story. The treasure hunters, in their desperate search for gold, destroyed this context forever. They moved the spheres from their original alignments, rolled them into ravines, or blew them to pieces, obliterating any patterns or meanings their creators might have intended. A priceless library of historical information was burned for a treasure that never existed. Eventually, the gold fever subsided, as more and more spheres were broken open to reveal nothing but solid gabbro. The treasure hunters lost interest and abandoned their destructive quest. The dust settled, both literally and figuratively, leaving behind a landscape littered with the fractured remains of these magnificent artifacts. And it was in this aftermath, amidst the quiet and the ruin, that the real mystery finally began to take shape. With the dreams of gold shattered, a far more profound and enduring puzzle took its place. The first wave of true scientific inquiry began. Archaeologists like Doris Stone arrived to study what was left. They cataloged the spheres, measured them, and tried to piece together the fragments of the story. The immediate, sensational question of what's inside was replaced by a set of deeper, more challenging questions that would baffle experts for decades to come. The first and most obvious question was, who made them? No written records from the region described the construction of giant stone spheres. The people who inhabited the Diquis Delta when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century seemed to have no connection to them, treating them as natural features of the landscape. It was clear that the spheres belonged to an older, lost civilization, a culture that had risen, perfected this incredible art form, and then vanished, leaving behind these silent, enigmatic calling cards. This led directly to the second question. How did they do it? How did a pre-industrial society, with no metal tools harder than copper, no complex machinery, and no laser-guided measuring devices, manage to carve some of the hardest rock on Earth into objects of such stunning geometric perfection? The level of skill, patience, and technical knowledge required was immense. To create even one large sphere would have been a monumental undertaking, a project spanning years, if not a lifetime. To create hundreds of them suggested a society deeply dedicated to the task. And finally, the greatest question of all, the one that continues to fuel speculation to this day. Why? What was the purpose of these colossal, perfect spheres? They weren't tools. They weren't dwellings. They were clearly objects of immense importance, requiring a massive investment of time and resources. Were they religious idols? Astronomical markers designed to track the sun and stars? Symbols of power and status for ancient chiefs? Or were they something else entirely? A message or a marker whose meaning is now lost to the winds of time? And so, the frantic discovery in the Costa Rican jungle had come full circle. It began with the brutal noise of machinery and ended in the profound silence of these ancient stones. The broken spheres served as a painful reminder of how easily the past can be erased. But the ones that survived, whether in museums, town squares, or still half buried in the jungle, became something more than just artifacts. They became silent questions carved in stone, posing a challenge to our understanding of the ancient world and standing as the opening chapter in the enduring mystery of the stone spheres of Costa Rica. Whenever we confront a mystery from the deep past, our first reaction is often one of simple wonder. The discovery of the Costa Rican spheres, emerging from the jungle floor like the eggs of some mythological beast, certainly fulfills that sense of awe. But once the initial shock of the discovery subsides, a more profound and far more difficult set of questions begins to surface. We move from the simple fact of what they found to the staggering enigma of how they were made. This is where the story of the spheres transforms from a tale of jungle discovery into one of the most perplexing engineering puzzles in the history of archaeology. To truly understand the depth of this puzzle, we must become stonemasons of the mind and begin where the ancient creators did, with the stone itself. Our first step is to understand the material they chose. The vast majority of the spheres are not carved from a soft, compliant material like sandstone or limestone, which can be easily shaped. Instead, their creators chose gabbro. For those of us who aren't geologists, that name might not mean much, but it is the absolute cornerstone of this entire mystery. Gabbro is a hard, dense, igneous rock, formed from molten magma that cooled slowly deep within the Earth's crust. Think of it as granite's tougher, more stubborn cousin. On the Mohs scale, which measures mineral hardness, gabbro ranks high, making it incredibly resistant to being cut, chipped, or shaped. This choice of material is, in itself, baffling. If your goal was simply to create a large, round object, why would you choose one of the most difficult canvases imaginable? It's like a painter choosing to create a masterpiece on a sheet of diamond instead of a canvas. The decision suggests that durability and permanence were paramount. These objects were not meant to be temporary. They were built to last for eternity, to withstand the relentless assault of time, weather, and the encroaching jungle. But in choosing this permanence, the creators set themselves a challenge of Herculean proportions. They were attempting to impose perfect, elegant geometry onto a material that aggressively resists any change to its form. This wasn't work for the impatient or the unskilled. This was a task that demanded a level of mastery and commitment that is difficult for us, in our age of power tools and precision machinery, to fully comprehend. The hardness of the stone is the first great wall we must climb in our attempt to understand their methods, and it immediately rules out any simple or easy explanation. Faced with this incredibly hard stone, and with no evidence of advanced metal tools, archaeologists have pieced together a theory of how it was done, a theory that is both elegantly simple and mind-bogglingly laborious. The proposed method is a two-stage process known as pecking and grinding. It's a technique that relies not on superior technology, but on something perhaps even more remarkable, an almost infinite supply of patience and time. The first stage, pecking, is exactly what it sounds like. The ancient artisan would begin with a massive, raw boulder of gabbro, perhaps weighing many tons more than the finished product. They would then take a smaller, harder stone and begin to systematically strike the surface of the boulder. Tap, tap, tap. A tiny chip of rock, no bigger than a grain of sand, would fly off. Tap, tap, tap. Another one. This would continue, hour after hour, day after day. The air would be filled with the constant, rhythmic percussion of stone striking stone. It would be a slow, grueling dance of controlled destruction, with the stonemason chipping away everything that wasn't a sphere. They would have had to constantly turn the massive boulder to work on all sides, ensuring that they were gradually rounding the entire mass, not just flattening one side. Imagine the sheer physical effort. The muscles in the arms and back would ache, the hands would be raw, and the progress would be almost imperceptible. A full day's work might only remove a few millimeters of rock from the surface. Days would turn into weeks, weeks into months, and for the largest spheres, months could easily have stretched into years. The creation of a single sphere may not have been the work of one person, but a generational project, a sacred task passed from a master to an apprentice, who would continue the same rhythmic tapping that their predecessor had started. Once the rough spherical shape was achieved through this painstaking pecking process, the second stage would begin, grinding and polishing. This is where the artistry truly came to the forefront. The workers would use abrasives, most likely sand, combined with water to create a slurry. Then, using flat blocks of stone or perhaps tough pieces of leather, they would begin to grind the surface of the sphere. This process would smooth out the millions of tiny marks left by the pecking stage, slowly revealing the smooth, dark, lustrous surface that we see today. Again, this required constant rotation of the sphere to ensure that the grinding was applied evenly across the entire surface, maintaining its roundness. It was this final, patient polishing that gave the spheres their finished, almost manufactured look. This explanation pecking and grindingus, the most widely accepted scientific theory. It requires no lost technology, no alien intervention, only the known tools and incredible perseverance of the Dequist people. On the surface, it makes sense. And yet, the more you consider its implications, the more incredible it seems. We are talking about a society investing what could amount to thousands, or even tens of thousands, of man-hours into the creation of a single decorative or ceremonial object. Now multiply that effort by the hundreds of spheres that have been discovered. The scale of this undertaking suggests it was a central pillar of their culture, a collective obsession that commanded a vast amount of their society's resources and time. While this theory provides a how, it deepens the mystery of why, and it still doesn't fully account for the most astonishing aspect of their creation. This brings us to the very heart of the enigma, the element that strains the simple pecking and grinding theory to its breaking point. The unbelievable, almost supernatural precision of the spheres. It's one thing to make a big, roundish boulder. It's another thing entirely to create a near-perfect sphere. Many of the larger Costa Rican spheres have been measured with tapes and plumb lines, and they exhibit a degree of sphericity that is, frankly, stunning. Some deviate from perfect roundness by only a few millimeters over a diameter of more than 2 meters. This is a level of precision that would be a respectable achievement for a modern machinist using computer-aided design and industrial lathes. So how, in the name of all that is logical, did a pre-industrial culture achieve it with nothing more than rocks, sand, and their own 2 hands? This is the challenge that elevates the spheres from a simple feat of hard work to a true enigma of ancient engineering. Creating that level of perfection is not just a physical challenge. It's an intellectual one. To maintain a perfect curve across such a large surface area requires constant, precise measurement. Any small error made on one side of the sphere would have to be perfectly mirrored on the opposite side. How did they check their work? They had no calipers large enough to measure the diameter of a 2-ton stone ball. They had no lasers to scan the surface for imperfections. It's believed they may have used simple but ingenious tools, perhaps strings held taut to check the curvature, or wooden templates carved into perfect arcs that they could hold against the surface. By constantly rotating the sphere and checking it against these simple guides from hundreds of different angles, they could have slowly, painstakingly, brought it closer and closer to a perfect shape. But even with such guides, the level of skill and judgment required from the artisan is almost beyond belief. Their eyes and hands would have been their most important instruments. They would have needed an intuitive, three-dimensional understanding of geometry that was practiced, not written. They were, in essence, human lathes, performing a task of immense mathematical complexity through sheer feel and experience. It is this chasm between the simplicity of their presumed tools and the complexity of their final product that leaves so many observers unsatisfied with the conventional explanation. Can sheer patience and dedication truly account for this degree of perfection? Or are we missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? When a culture achieves something that seems to defy its known technological level, it opens a door. And through that door, more speculative and perhaps more exciting, theories begin to emerge. This leads us to our final point, the counterargument. When an ancient mystery presents us with a feat that seems almost impossible by conventional standards, human curiosity naturally begins to search for unconventional answers. The sheer perfection of the spheres has led many researchers and independent thinkers to propose that the Dequis people may have possessed a form of lost knowledge or technology that has since vanished from the world. These theories, while lacking direct physical evidence, are born from a refusal to believe that the pecking and grinding method alone could produce such flawless results. One of the most popular alternative theories centers on the manipulation of the stone itself. Could the ancient creators have known of a way to make the rock temporarily soft? Legends from other parts of the Americas, particularly in the Andes, speak of a plant whose juices could melt or soften stone, allowing it to be molded like clay before it rehardened. Is it possible the people of the Dequis Delta had a similar secret, a mastery of local botany that gave them a chemical advantage? They could have applied a poultice of specific plant extracts to the gabbro, softening its outer layer and making the job of carving and shaping exponentially easier. This would explain how they achieved such smooth surfaces and perfect curves with relative ease. Another fascinating, though more exotic, theory involves the use of sound. The field of cymatics has shown that sound frequencies can create complex geometric patterns in materials like sand or water. Some theorists propose that the ancient sphere makers may have had a sophisticated understanding of acoustics. By using chants, drums, or some unknown sonic device, they might have been able to generate powerful, focused sound waves. These vibrations could have been used to create microfractures in the rock, allowing pieces to be chipped away with incredible precision, or even to find the natural grain of the stone, making it easier to work. This idea of sonic stonework sounds like science fiction, but proponents point to the recurring importance of sound and vibration in the spiritual practices of ancient cultures worldwide. It's crucial, of course, to approach these ideas with a healthy dose of skepticism. As of today, there is no direct archaeological evidence to support them. No remnants of strange sonic devices have ever been found. No unusual chemical residues have been detected on the spheres that would suggest a softening agent was used. These remain tantalizing speculations, ideas that exist in the space between what we know and what we can't explain. And so, we are left standing before these silent stone marvels, caught between two extraordinary possibilities. On the one hand, we have the orthodox explanation, a story of human beings with simple tools, who, through an almost unbelievable investment of time, willpower, and generational skill, accomplished the impossible. On the other hand, we have the tantalizing possibility of a forgotten science, a lost technology that gave these ancient people a power over stone that we can no longer fathom. In a way, it doesn't matter which explanation is true, because both are equally astounding. Whether a testament to human endurance or to lost genius, the creation of the stone spheres remains an unparalleled feat of engineering. The mystery of how they were made is not just a technical question. It's a testament to the profound and often underestimated capabilities of our ancient ancestors, a puzzle in stone that continues to challenge the limits of our own imagination. We have stood in awe of the sheer effort, the impossible patience, and the breathtaking skill that went into the creation of the Costa Rican spheres. We have grappled with the enigma of their engineering, a puzzle of stone and sweat that challenges our very perception of what ancient people could achieve. But now we must step beyond the physical and into the realm of the metaphysical. We must ask the question that lies at the very soul of this mystery. Why? Why would a civilization dedicate generations of effort, resources, and artistry to creating hundreds of perfect stone balls? The sheer scale of the undertaking tells us that these were not casual decorations. Their purpose had to be as monumental as their weight, as profound as their perfection. The creators of the spheres have long since vanished, leaving no written records, no user's manual for their magnificent creations. All we have are the objects themselves, and the tantalizing clues they left behind in their placement and design. And so, the search for purpose becomes a journey through a landscape of captivating theories, each attempting to give a voice to these silent stone giants. Our first destination on this journey takes us from the earth to the heavens. One of the most compelling and widespread theories is that the spheres were components of a vast astronomical instrument. The idea is that this ancient culture did not see the sky as we do, as a random scattering of distant lights. They saw it as a clock, a calendar, and a map, a divine blueprint that dictated the seasons, guided their agriculture, and foretold important events. And the spheres, in this view, were the hands and markers of that cosmic clock, laid out upon the land itself. Early reports from the 1930s and 40s, before the sites were catastrophically disturbed, described spheres found in specific, deliberate arrangements. Some were laid out in long, straight lines. Others formed triangles, rectangles, or gentle curves. These were not random placements. They were geometric patterns on a landscape scale. Archaeologists and archaeoastronomers have long speculated that these alignments were not arbitrary. They believe they were precisely positioned to point to significant celestial events. A line of spheres, for instance, might have been sighted along the horizon to mark the exact position of the sunrise on the summer or winter solstice, the longest and shortest days of the year. For an agricultural society, knowing these dates with precision was not a trivial matter. It was essential for survival. It told them when to plant and when to harvest. Other alignments could have pointed to the equinoxes, or even to the rising and setting points of prominent stars or constellations, like the Pleiades, which were culturally significant to many ancient peoples across the Americas. In this context, the entire Dequas Delta could be seen as a massive open-air observatory. The spheres were the physical anchors that connected the earth below to the cosmos above. They were instruments of science and spirituality, tools that allowed the priests or shamans to interpret the will of the gods written in the stars, and to demonstrate their power by predicting the movements of the sun and moon. The perfection of the spheres themselves might have been symbolic, representing the perfection and cyclical nature of the celestial bodies. They were meant to track the sun, the moon, the planets. But this grand and beautiful theory is haunted by a modern tragedy. The very actions that brought the spheres to light, the clearing of the jungle and the subsequent gold rush, also destroyed the most crucial evidence. Most of the spheres were moved from their original locations. They were rolled into ravines by farmers, dynamited by treasure hunters, or carted off to be used as lawn ornaments in the gardens of the wealthy. With their original patterns shattered, the astronomical code is now almost impossible to crack. We are left with a few surviving alignments and old survey maps, fragments of a language whose grammar we can no longer fully reconstruct. We can see the tantalizing possibility that these people were master astronomers, but the proof remains just beyond our grasp, a lost conversation between the stones and the stars. This idea of a celestial connection, however, provides a natural bridge to our next theory. If the spheres were used to understand the heavens, then the people who could interpret their meaning, the ones who knew the secrets of the sun and stars, would have held immense influence. This leads us from the cosmos down to the complex world of human society, to the theory that the spheres were, above all else, powerful symbols of status and power. This theory is perhaps the most grounded in human nature. Throughout history, leaders have always sought ways to display their authority. They build palaces, wear crowns, and command armies. In the world of the ancient Dequas people, what could be a more potent symbol of power than a giant, perfect stone sphere? The evidence for this is compelling. Many of the spheres were discovered in prominent public spaces, such as in front of the entrances to large dwellings presumed to belong to chieftains, or in the center of village plazas. Their placement was a deliberate public statement. A sphere was a testament to a leader's immense resources. It declared, in a language that needed no words, "I possess the wealth to commission this object. I can command the labor of dozens of men for years. I have access to the master artisans who hold the secret of its perfect creation." Each sphere was the physical embodiment of a chief's influence. The larger and more perfect the sphere, the greater the power of its owner. A village with a dozen spheres was clearly more important than a village with two. A chief with a 2-meter sphere at his doorstep was undeniably more powerful than one with a half-meter sphere. They were the ultimate status symbols of their time, the pre-Columbian equivalent of a skyscraper or a marble monument. This theory also helps to explain the sheer difficulty of their creation. The fact that they were made from hard gabbro, and not something easier to carve, was part of the point. The difficulty was the message. It was a demonstration of a leader's ability to overcome a monumental challenge, to impose human will onto the hardest of natural materials. The sphere's perfection was a reflection of the chief's own perceived perfection and his divinely ordained right to rule. It was a piece of art that broadcasted social and political dominance across the landscape. This idea doesn't contradict the astronomical theory. It complements it. A powerful chief might commission a sphere to be placed in an astronomically significant alignment, thereby demonstrating that he not only controlled the land but was also in harmony with the cosmos. The object could serve a dual purpose, being both a scientific instrument and a political statement. The search for purpose is rarely a search for a single answer. In complex societies, objects often carry multiple layers of meaning. But the idea of status and power feels deeply intuitive. It explains the spheres on a human level, as products of ambition, pride, and the timeless desire to leave a permanent mark on the world. From marking a single point of power like a chieftain's home, it's a small logical step to consider that the spheres might have marked much larger areas. This brings us to our third major theory, that the spheres served as territorial boundary markers or navigational aids. The Dequis Delta is a complex environment. Even today, it can be a disorienting maze of rivers, swamps, and dense jungle. For a culture without written maps or modern surveying equipment, establishing and maintaining clear boundaries would have been crucial for social order and trade. In such a world, a massive, immovable, and utterly unique stone sphere would be the ultimate landmark. You can't miss it. You can't mistake it for a natural feature. It is an unambiguous declaration of, "This is a significant place." Archaeological evidence suggests some spheres were placed along natural transit corridors, such as mountain ridges or near major rivers. It's plausible they were used to define the borders between the territories of different clans or chiefdoms. A line of spheres might have functioned as a great wall, not a physical barrier, but a symbolic one, a clear line drawn upon the land that everyone understood. Crossing that line could mean entering the domain of another ruler, or perhaps a sacred area where different rules applied. They could have also served as a map, guiding people through the landscape. A specific sphere could mark the start of a trade route, another could signify a safe river crossing, and a third could point the way to a sacred site hidden deep within the jungle. They could have been the permanent signposts in a world of shifting vegetation and changing riverbeds. This theory grounds the spheres in a very practical, everyday purpose. They weren't just for the elite or for a handful of priests. They were part of the very fabric of how everyone in the society navigated and understood their world. They brought order to the chaos of the jungle, transforming the natural landscape into a structured, humanized space. And once again, this purpose could easily coexist with the others. The boundary marker of a powerful chief could also be aligned to a star, reinforcing his claim to the land with a claim to the heavens. We have now explored three logical, compelling, and well-reasoned theories: the spheres as astronomical tools, as symbols of power, and as territorial markers. Any or all of these could be true. They paint a picture of a sophisticated, organized, and deeply symbolic society. But there is one more door to open. It is a door that leads us away from the familiar territory of archaeology and into the vast, open ocean of the unknown. It is the theory that dares to ask, what if the spheres are not what they seem? What if they are the legacy of something else entirely? This final theory is the most speculative, and for many, the most exciting. It proposes that the spheres are connected to a lost civilization, or perhaps something even more mysterious. This idea is fueled by the central paradox of the spheres, the apparent disconnect between the simplicity of the known Dequis culture and the sublime technological perfection of the objects they left behind. To some, the feat of engineering is so great that it seems to be the work of a different, more advanced culture altogether. This line of thought connects the Costa Rican spheres to the grand mythologies of lost worlds. Whispers of Atlantis, the sunken city of a hyper-advanced civilization, or Lemuria, its Pacific counterpart, have echoed for centuries. Could the spheres be relics of one of these legendary cultures? Perhaps they were outposts or monuments left by Atlantean colonists who had a mastery of stone-shaping technologies that we can only dream of. In this view, the local Dequis people were not the creators, but merely the inheritors or guardians of these ancient objects, their original purpose already forgotten long before the Spanish ever arrived. Taking this speculation a step further, some researchers venture beyond lost worlds on Earth and look to the stars. The extreme precision and seemingly alien perfection of the spheres have inevitably led to theories of extraterrestrial involvement. Could these objects be markers left behind by ancient visitors to our planet? Were they a navigational system, a beacon, or a message for intelligences far beyond our own? In this narrative, the spheres are not just ancient artifacts. They are potential evidence of contact, a tangible link between humanity and the cosmos that is far more direct than simple astronomical observation. These theories, of course, exist at the very edge of belief. They are not supported by any direct physical evidence, but they persist because they offer an answer to the most difficult questions. They provide a potential explanation for the impossible level of precision and the mysterious disappearance of the Creator's knowledge. They tap into a deep-seated human desire to believe that we are part of a much larger, older, and more fantastic story than conventional history tells us. And so, the search for purpose leaves us standing at a crossroads. We can see the spheres through the lens of science and archaeology, as the masterful creations of an indigenous American culture, astronomical, social, and geographical tools. Or we can see them as echoes of a deeper, more mysterious past, as the fingerprints of a lost world or even visitors from another. The beautiful and perhaps frustrating truth is that the spheres themselves remain silent. They do not confirm or deny any of these ideas. They simply are. And perhaps their true purpose was a tapestry woven from all these threads: a clock, a crown, a map, and a sacred mystery, all at once. Their meaning may have been so complex and so deeply embedded in the lost worldview of their creators that we, with our modern minds, can only ever hope to catch glimpses of the truth. The why remains the ultimate enigma, a perfect question mark, carved in stone. Our journey has taken us deep into the jungles of Costa Rica, back through the centuries, and to the very edge of what we know about the ancient world. We have marveled at the discovery of the stone spheres, struggled to comprehend the monumental effort of their creation, and navigated a labyrinth of theories about their ultimate purpose. Now, as we emerge from the depths of this mystery, we must confront the final, and perhaps most poignant, part of their story, their legacy. What do these silent, perfect objects mean for us today? And what are the final, lingering questions they leave echoing in our minds? The first and most haunting question of their legacy is a simple one. What happened to the people who made them? We have given them a name, the Dequis Cultura label provided by archaeology to identify the civilization that flourished in this region between roughly 600 AD and 1500 AD. But a name is not a story. The truth is, we know remarkably little about them. They were a people without a written language, so they left no books, no histories, no personal accounts of their lives, their beliefs, or their motivations. All we have are the artifacts they left behind. Their intricate gold work, their distinctive pottery, and, of course, their magnificent stone spheres. The end of their story appears to be as abrupt as the spheres are solid. Their culture seems to have reached its peak right around the time the first European ships were making their way across the Atlantic. Around 1500 AD, coinciding with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors in the wider region, the Dequis culture disappears from the archaeological record. The great chiefdoms collapsed. The creation of stone spheres stopped. The vibrant society that had poured its soul into these incredible works of art and engineering simply faded away. It is highly likely that the arrival of Europeans, either directly or indirectly, was the catalyst for this collapse. Foreign diseases to which the indigenous population had no immunity, such as smallpox and measles, often traveled faster than the conquistadors themselves, decimating populations before a single sword was drawn. Social upheaval, warfare, and the disruption of ancient trade networks would have done the rest. In the chaos of this new era, the old ways were lost. The sacred knowledge, passed down through generations of master artisans, the secrets of selecting the right stone, of shaping it with perfect precision, of aligning it with the stars, vanished. It didn't just fade. It fell off a cliff. The chain of knowledge was broken so completely that within a few generations, the descendants of the sphere makers themselves may have looked upon the great stone balls with the same sense of wonder and confusion that we do today. This is the definition of a lost civilization. Not just a people who are gone, but a people whose core knowledge, whose very identity, has been erased. The spheres are their tombstones, majestic and beautiful, but inscribed in a language that no one is left alive to read. From this tragic historical silence, we move to the present day. The legacy of the spheres is not just one of loss. It is also one of rebirth and rediscovery. Today, these ancient artifacts are no longer seen as obstacles in a banana plantation or as potential treasure chests. They have been embraced as a vital part of Costa Rica's national identity. They are a source of immense pride, a direct and powerful link to the country's pre-Columbian heritage. They are celebrated as proof that the history of this land did not begin with the arrival of Columbus, but stretches back into a deep and sophisticated past. In 2014, the collection of spheres and their original sites in the Diquis Delta were granted one of the highest honors in the world of cultural heritage. They were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This recognition places them alongside other global wonders like the Pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, and the Great Wall of China. It is an international acknowledgement of their outstanding universal value to all of humanity. This status has brought with it a renewed focus on their preservation and study. Spheres that were once used as garden decorations have been carefully moved to the National Museum of Costa Rica in San Jose, where they are displayed with the reverence they deserve. Archaeologists are working tirelessly to protect the sites that remain intact, using modern technologies like LiDAR to scan the jungle floor, hoping to uncover more spheres and perhaps, one day, find an undisturbed alignment that could finally unlock their astronomical secrets. For the people of Costa Rica, the spheres, known affectionately as Las Bolas, are more than just archaeological curiosities. They are symbols of a forgotten ingenuity, a testament to the skill and perseverance of their ancestors. They appear on currency, in art, and in government logos. They represent a mystery that is uniquely Costa Rican, a piece of the global puzzle of the ancient world that belongs to them. Their legacy has transformed from one of obscurity and destruction to one of celebration and protection. They have become silent ambassadors for a lost world, reminding us all of the rich and complex tapestry of human history that existed in the Americas long before the modern age. This brings us to our next point of reflection. As we elevate the spheres to their rightful place on the world stage, it becomes clear that they do not stand alone. Their legacy is deeply interwoven with a global pattern of ancient enigmas. When you look at the Costa Rican spheres, it's impossible not to think of other similar mysteries scattered across the planet. Why did ancient cultures, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, all feel a compelling need to engage in megalithic construction, the art of shaping and moving massive stones? Think of Stonehenge in England, with its giant sarsens and bluestones arranged in a precise celestial calendar. Think of the Moai of Easter Island, colossal stone heads staring out at the ocean, their creation and purpose still debated. Consider the vast, intricate stone city of Pumapunku in Bolivia, with its H-blocks cut with such precision that they appear to have been laser-cut. Or the megalithic temples of Malta, older than the pyramids themselves. All of these sites share a common thread with the spheres of Costa Rica. They were all built by cultures with what we would consider primitive technology. They all involved the shaping and transport of stones so massive that it challenges our understanding of their capabilities. And in nearly every case, their original purpose is shrouded in mystery, lost to the mists of time. It's as if there was a global megalithic age, an era when humanity was obsessed with stone, with permanence, and with making a powerful statement on the landscape. What was driving this shared impulse? Was it a universal human response to the natural world, an attempt to bring order to chaos and to connect with the cosmos? Or does this global pattern hint at something more? Some researchers suggest it could be evidence of a shared knowledge base, a system of engineering and astronomical wisdom that was somehow transmitted across the ancient world, a lost mother culture whose influence was felt on every continent. While there is no concrete proof of such a culture, the pattern itself is undeniable. The spheres of Costa Rica are not an isolated mystery. They are a crucial piece of a much larger, planet-wide puzzle. Their legacy is to remind us that our ancestors, wherever they lived, were more connected, more capable, and infinitely more mysterious than we often give them credit for. And so, after all our exploration, we arrive at the final, ultimate, unanswered question. It is the culmination of everything we've discussed. We've asked who, how, and why. But the most profound question that the legacy of the spheres leaves us with is a fusion of all three. Why did this culture pour such an extraordinary amount of its collective energy, skill, and time into creating hundreds of these perfect, enigmatic objects, only for the entire tradition and all its associated knowledge to completely and utterly vanish? This is the central paradox. It's not just that they built them. It's that the knowledge of how to build them disappeared so completely. Usually, important cultural traditions evolve or fade slowly over time. But the art of sphere-making seems to have simply stopped, as if a switch was flipped. There are no less perfect spheres from a later, declining period. There are no written accounts from their descendants explaining what the old ones used them for. There is only a deafening silence. This silence is what makes the spheres so powerfully enigmatic. Creates a vacuum that our imaginations rush to fill. Was their knowledge so sacred, so tied to a specific priestly class, that when that class was wiped out, the knowledge died with them? Was it a technology or wisdom given to them from an outside source, a bit another culture or something more exotic that was later taken away? Or was the purpose of the spheres so specific to their unique worldview that when their society collapsed, the objects themselves became meaningless, their purpose incomprehensible to those who came after? The ultimate unanswered question, then, is about the nature of knowledge itself and how fragile it can be. The spheres are a humbling lesson in cultural amnesia. They prove that a society can reach incredible heights of artistic and technical achievement, and that this achievement can be almost entirely erased from human memory. They are a physical testament to the fact that what seems permanent can be lost, and that the greatest stories can be forgotten. In the end, the silence of the spheres is the loudest part of their story. They don't provide us with easy answers. Instead, they offer us something far more valuable, a profound and enduring sense of wonder. They challenge our assumptions, they ignite our curiosity, and they remind us that the past is not a closed book. It is a vast, mysterious landscape, with hidden wonders still waiting to be discovered, and questions that may never, ever be fully answered. The legacy of the spheres is this final, beautiful question mark, perfectly carved in stone. The stone spheres of Costa Rica remain one of archaeology's most beautiful and baffling puzzles. They are silent witnesses to a lost civilization's power, artistry, and mysterious beliefs. Were they calendars, status symbols, or something else entirely? Perhaps we'll never know for sure. And maybe that's what makes them so captivating. They remind us that our planet is still full of ancient mysteries, waiting to be rediscovered. What do you think they were used for? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more explorations of our world's greatest secrets. Thanks for exploring history's mysteries with Ancient Relics Keeper. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. What secret should we unravel next? Stay curious and see you soon.